Picture this. The year is 2008. Barack Obama, a charismatic candidate from the Democratic Party, breaks barriers to become the first black president of the United States. Fast forward to May 2022, Joe Biden, another Democratic nominee, stirs controversy with a statement, "You're not black if you vote for Trump." It's a known fact that a significant number of black Americans lean towards the Democratic Party. But why is this so? What's the story behind this political affinity? To truly understand, we must travel back in time. To the days of slavery and the Civil War, through the era of civil rights, the influence of leaders like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and ultimately, the election of Barack Obama. Each of these chapters has shaped the relationship between the Democratic Party and Black America. It's a complex tale, rich in history and emotion. In the 19th century, the Democratic Party was largely composed of slave owners, or those supporting the preservation of slavery. However, it's crucial to remember that the Democratic Party of the past bears little resemblance to its modern counterpart. The party has experienced significant ideological shifts, marked by key events and figures. The Civil War was a defining moment, witnessing a split within the Democratic Party. While some Democrats maintained their support for slavery, others, particularly in the North, began to advocate for its abolition. The Emancipation Proclamation, issued by Republican President Abraham Lincoln, was instrumental in ending slavery. However, it was the Democratic Party that would champion the cause of civil rights in the following decades. Martin Luther King Jr., a beacon of the civil rights movement, was a registered Republican. Yet, it was the Democratic Party that embraced his cause, propelling forward legislative changes to secure equal rights for Black Americans. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, both signed into law by Democratic President Lyndon B. Johnson, were monumental in dismantling segregation and ensuring voting rights for Black Americans. Meanwhile, Malcolm X, a key figure in the Black liberation movement, held a more critical view of the Democratic Party. He contended that both major political parties were falling short in addressing systemic issues faced by Black Americans. Malcolm X firmly believed that true liberation could only be achieved through self-determination and self-reliance. Fast forward to 2008, a watershed moment in American history. The election of Barack Obama as the first Black president of the United States was a testament to the progress made by the Democratic Party and the country as a whole. However, it also underscored the persistent challenges and inequalities within the Black community. Yet the Democratic Party's relationship with Black Americans is not without its controversies. Critics argue that the party has sometimes taken the Black vote for granted, assuming automatic support from Black Americans. Furthermore, some contend that the party's focus on identity politics may overshadow broader socio-economic issues impacting the Black community. In conclusion, the Democratic Party has been both a protagonist and antagonist in the narrative of Black Americans. From the era of slavery to the civil rights movement and beyond, its role has been pivotal, yet complex. It's a relationship marked by progress and pitfalls, hope and disillusionment. And as we move forward, the question remains, does the Democratic Party truly represent the interests of Black Americans? Only time will tell. Have you ever pondered the complex relationship between Black people and the Democratic Party during the era of slavery? A time when the Democratic Party, a major political force, was deeply entrenched in the southern states, where the dark shadow of slavery loomed large. In these southern territories, many Democrats were slave owners themselves, using the brutal system of slavery to fuel their plantations and maintain their way of life. This economic reliance on slavery was a significant driving force behind the party's support for the institution. Democratic politicians didn't shy away from defending slavery, claiming it was vital for the Southern economy and lifestyle. The infamous Dred Scott v. Sanford Supreme Court ruling in 1857, which declared Black people were not citizens and had no rights, further underscored the Democratic Party's complicity in upholding this abhorrent institution. The Democratic Party's early platform included the protection and expansion of slavery into new territories. This stance deepened the alliance between Southern Democrats and the slaveholding class, creating a powerful political stronghold. The Democratic Party was deeply entrenched in the Southern economy, which was heavily reliant on slavery. A stark divide existed within the Democratic Party itself, with Northern and Southern Democrats often at odds over the issue of slavery. The Democratic Party, a melting pot of political ideologies, was not immune to the discord caused by this contentious issue. Northern Democrats, influenced by an economy less reliant on slave labor, often found themselves opposing the spread of slavery. They were, however, caught in the political crossfire, struggling to reconcile their personal beliefs with the party's pro-slavery stance. On the other hand, Southern Democrats, many of whom were slaveholders, staunchly defended the institution that was deeply woven into their economic fabric. The election of President James Buchanan, a fervent supporter of slavery in 1856, marked a significant turning point. His presidency solidified the party's alignment with the interests of slaveholders, deepening the rift within its ranks. This division within the party would play a significant role in the events leading up to the Civil War. The Civil War, a pivotal moment in American history, brought the issue of slavery to the forefront of the nation's consciousness. This conflict was a test of the nation's moral compass, a battle between the ideals of liberty and the harsh realities of an economy that thrived on the exploitation of enslaved black people. For the Democratic Party, the Civil War was a moment of reckoning. The party's internal conflicts over slavery became glaringly evident, as Southern Democrats chose to secede from the Union, prioritizing the preservation of slavery over national unity. Meanwhile, a faction of Northern Democrats chose a different path. Some, recognizing the inhumanity of slavery, supported the Union and advocated for the abolition of this degrading institution. These divergent responses highlighted the deep divisions within the party, revealing the moral and ideological chasms that had been simmering beneath the surface. The Civil War presented a crisis that the Democratic Party, so deeply divided over slavery, could not overcome. The legacy of the Democratic Party's involvement in slavery continues to shape perceptions and discussions about race and democracy in America. The party's history is steeped in a paradoxical narrative, navigating through a dark past towards a future championing civil rights. The Democratic Party, once a fortress of pro-slavery sentiment, underwent a profound transformation. The journey was not smooth nor straightforward, but fraught with internal conflict and external pressures. The party grappled with its own convictions, eventually emerging as a platform advocating for the rights and liberties of all citizens. The contradictions within the party's history mirror the complexities of the American political landscape. These complexities, deeply intertwined with the issues of race and power, have left an indelible mark on the nation's history and continue to influence contemporary politics. In understanding this historical relationship, we are reminded of the enduring impact of slavery on the fabric of American society. Understanding this historical relationship sheds light on the complexities of race, power, and politics in America's past and present. Have you ever wondered about the complex relationship between the Democratic Party and Black Americans during the Civil War? Let's start by painting a picture of the pre-Civil War political landscape. In those days, the Democratic Party was a strong supporter of slavery and states' rights. These were deeply entrenched Southern interests that unfortunately created a formidable barrier between the party and Black Americans. The party's platform, especially in the South, was heavily rooted in the preservation of slavery and the protection of states' rights. But these rights often came at a significant cost: the rights and freedoms of Black people. The Democratic Party's pro-slavery stance created a significant rift, alienating many Black Americans who were striving for emancipation and equality. This alignment with Southern interests and the preservation of slavery widened the divide between the Democratic Party and Black Americans. The Civil War, a defining moment in American history, drastically influenced the dynamics between the Democratic Party and Black people. As the nation was thrust into a bloody battle over the future of slavery, the Democratic Party found itself torn. The internal divisions within the party grew more pronounced, with some Northern Democrats rallying behind the Union's cause and the abolition of slavery, while their Southern counterparts stubbornly clung to the defense of this oppressive institution. The year 1863 brought with it a game-changing move: the Emancipation Proclamation. This landmark executive order, issued by Republican President Abraham Lincoln, declared all enslaved people in Confederate-held territory to be free. This was not just a severe blow to the institution of slavery, but it also tipped the political scales in favor of the Republicans, the party that had been championing the abolitionist cause. The Democratic Party's association with the Confederacy and its defense of slavery further strained its relationship with Black people. As the Civil War ended, the Democratic Party faced a reckoning with its past and its relationship with Black people. The echoes of the party's past allegiance to the Southern cause and its alignment with the institution of slavery reverberated in the minds of many. The party was left grappling with the need to redefine its platform in the aftermath of a war that had torn the nation apart and abolished the very institution it had once defended. This was no easy task. The Democratic Party's efforts were met with skepticism and distrust from many in the black community. The wounds of the past were far from healed, and the party's history was viewed with suspicion. The task of rebuilding trust was monumental, and the journey fraught with challenges. The party's history of supporting slavery and the Confederacy left a lasting impression on the black community. The Civil War left an indelible mark on the relationship between the Democratic Party and black Americans. The war was a crucible that tested and ultimately overhauled the political dynamics of the nation. The Democratic Party's alignment with Southern interests and its defense of slavery during the conflict created a chasm between the party and black Americans. The Emancipation Proclamation by President Lincoln, a Republican, tipped the political scales in favor of the Republicans, who were seen as champions of abolition. The post-war Democratic Party faced a daunting task of reconciling with its past and rebuilding trust with the black community. This period of reckoning was met with skepticism and distrust, further straining the relationship. The lasting tensions birthed from the Civil War era continue to shape the political landscape, creating ripples that are felt even today. Understanding the legacy of the Civil War is crucial to comprehending the complexities of race, power, and politics in the evolving relationship between the Democratic Party and black Americans. The Civil Rights Movement era in the United States was a pivotal time that witnessed significant advancements in the fight for racial equality and justice. This historic period saw the rise of powerful leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., a Baptist minister and civil rights activist who became the face of nonviolent resistance. His eloquent voice and tireless efforts brought the issue of civil rights to the national consciousness, resonating with millions of Americans, both black and white. Another influential figure, Malcolm X, emerged as a prominent figure in the black liberation movement. His critical perspective on the efforts of major political parties, including the Democratic Party, spurred a more profound dialogue on systemic issues faced by black Americans. These leaders, with their distinct approaches, left an indelible mark on the relationship between the Democratic Party and black Americans, shaping the discourse of racial equality and justice that we continue to grapple with today. Martin Luther King Jr., a Baptist minister and civil rights activist, became the face of the nonviolent resistance movement during the Civil Rights Movement. King's philosophy of nonviolence and love was not only a rallying cry for people of color seeking equality, but also resonated with many within the Democratic Party. His eloquent speeches on unity and peace captured the attention of influential figures, including President Lyndon B. Johnson. Recognizing the necessity of change, the Democratic Party took up the mantle of civil rights reform. Landmark legislation such as the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were signed into law under Johnson's administration. These acts aimed to dismantle the oppressive structures of segregation and protect the voting rights of black Americans, marking significant strides in the battle for racial equality. The Democratic Party, under the leadership of President Lyndon B. Johnson, took significant steps to advance civil rights legislation. While Martin Luther King Jr. worked closely with the Democratic Party to effect change, Malcolm X took a more critical stance. Malcolm X, a prominent figure in the black liberation movement, saw both major political parties as part of the problem rather than the solution. He believed that the Democrats, like their Republican counterparts, were not doing enough to address the systemic issues faced by black Americans. His critique resonated with some black Americans who felt disillusioned by the slow progress of civil rights reforms. They were drawn to Malcolm X's advocacy for black nationalism and self-defense, a stark contrast to King's philosophy of nonviolent protest. His stance challenged the Democratic Party's approach to racial equality, pushing for a more radical, self-determined path to black liberation. His influence, though often seen as radical and outside mainstream political discourse, was nonetheless significant. He ignited a conversation around the need for a more aggressive pursuit of equality and justice. Malcolm X's advocacy for black nationalism and self-defense challenged the Democratic Party's approach to racial equality. The Democratic Party's alignment with the goals of the civil rights movement helped solidify its relationship with black Americans. This alignment was no accident. It was the result of tireless advocacy by leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., who championed the cause of racial equality. His nonviolent protests and calls for unity resonated with many, shaping the Democratic Party's identity and its appeal to diverse communities. The civil rights movement wasn't just a historical moment, it was a catalyst for change. It pushed the Democratic Party to address racial inequality head-on, leading to landmark legislation like the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. These laws were significant steps towards dismantling segregation and protecting the voting rights of Black Americans. However, the struggle for racial justice and equality is far from over. The legacy of the Civil Rights Movement era continues to shape the dynamics between the Democratic Party and Black Americans, underscoring the ongoing struggle for racial justice and equality.
How did Barack Obama's election change the dynamics of American politics? This is a question that reverberates through the annals of history, echoing in the hearts and minds of millions. The election of Barack Obama as the first Black president of the United States in 2008 wasn't just an election, it was an epical event that forever changed the landscape of American politics. In the grand tapestry of the Democratic Party's relationship with Black Americans, Obama's election represented a vibrant, hopeful thread. It signified a historic milestone, a culmination of decades of struggle for racial equality. His presidency was more than a political tenure, it was a symbol of progress, a beacon of hope, and a testament to the power of perseverance. The Democratic Party, known for its commitment to diversity and representation, played a pivotal role in this historic event. Their support for Obama's campaign was a profound statement, an affirmation of their commitment to inclusivity. It demonstrated that the Democratic Party was ready to challenge the status quo, to break down barriers and uplift voices that had long been marginalized. Obama's message of unity, change, and inclusivity resonated with a broad coalition of voters, striking a chord with many Black Americans. They saw his candidacy as more than just a political campaign. It was a symbol of progress, a promise of a brighter future. For them, Obama's election was a tangible manifestation of the possibility of change, a validation that their voices mattered, their dreams were valid, and their struggles were recognized. The election of Barack Obama shattered racial barriers, challenging stereotypes and reshaping perceptions about leadership and race in America. His victory demonstrated that a person of color could ascend to the highest office in the land, inspiring a new generation of Black leaders and activists to pursue political engagement and social change. In essence, Obama's victory was a testament to the power of hope and the promise of progress. It was a reflection of the strides made towards racial equality and a symbol of the Democratic Party's commitment to diversity and representation. Obama's victory shattered racial barriers and reshaped perceptions about leadership and race in America. What was the journey from Obama's candidacy to his presidency like? Well, let's take a walk through history. Barack Obama burst onto the national scene at the Democratic National Convention in 2004 with a message of unity, change, and inclusivity that struck a chord with a wide spectrum of voters. His candidacy, announced 3 years later, symbolized a beacon of progress and possibility, particularly for Black Americans who saw in him a reflection of their aspirations and potential. His journey to the presidency was far from easy. The road was strewn with challenges, some inherent to the political process, others a reflection of the deeply polarized political climate of the time. Amidst an economic recession that had left millions in financial distress, Obama campaigned on a promise to bring about much-needed change. His message resonated, and in November of 2008, Obama shattered centuries-old racial barriers to become the first Black president of the United States. His victory was not just a personal achievement, but a testament to the strides the country had made towards racial equality. However, the challenges didn't end there. As President Obama navigated a sea of social unrest and continued economic uncertainty, his administration faced opposition at every turn, often exacerbated by the color of his skin. Yet he remained undeterred, committed to bringing about the change he had promised. Throughout his presidency, Obama's administration worked relentlessly to advance policies that directly benefited Black Americans. From healthcare reform that expanded access to millions, including many in the Black community, to criminal justice reform and economic stimulus measures, Obama's policies aimed to address the systemic issues plaguing the country. Despite many obstacles, Obama's administration made significant strides in advancing policies benefiting Black Americans. This journey from candidacy to presidency wasn't just about breaking racial barriers, it was about showing that leadership could be inclusive, that progress was possible, and that hope, even in the face of adversity, could be a powerful catalyst for change. What impact did Obama's policies have on Black Americans? This is a question that invites us to delve into the heart of Obama's administration and its profound influence on the lives of Black Americans. One of the standout achievements of Obama's presidency was his commitment to healthcare reform. The Affordable Care Act, more commonly known as Obamacare, expanded access to healthcare for millions of Americans. For many in the Black community who had historically been underserved by the healthcare system, this was a game changer. It offered a lifeline, a chance at better health, and therefore a better life. Next, we must mention Obama's strides in criminal justice reform. His administration took significant steps to address the systemic biases that have disproportionately affected Black Americans. Obama's Fair Sentencing Act reduced the disparity between sentences for crack and powder cocaine offenses, a disparity that had long been a source of racial injustice in the criminal justice system. On the economic front, Obama's administration implemented stimulus measures that helped to pull the country out of the Great Recession. These measures, while not exclusively targeted at Black Americans, benefited the community by helping to stabilize the economy and create jobs. The Black unemployment rate, which had peaked at over 16% in 2010, fell by nearly half by the end of Obama's second term. But it was not just his policies that made a difference, it was his presence, his voice, his leadership. Obama used his platform to engage in conversations about race, to challenge stereotypes, and to insist on a more inclusive vision of America. So, what impact did Obama's policies have on Black Americans? They opened doors, they broke down barriers, they created opportunities, but perhaps most importantly, they sent a message to Black Americans and to all Americans that progress is possible, that change can happen, and that a more equitable future is within our reach. Obama's presidency highlighted the complexities of race and politics in America, and in doing so, it left an indelible mark on the fabric of our nation, a mark that continues to shape and inspire us today. What were some of the critiques and controversies faced by Obama? This question opens up an essential discussion about the complexities of Obama's presidency. Even though his election was a monumental stride towards racial equality, it wasn't devoid of criticism. A significant portion of the criticism came from within the Black community itself. Some Black activists and scholars felt that Obama's policies did not sufficiently address the deeply entrenched systemic racism and inequality that permeates American society. They argued that while Obama's presidency symbolized progress, it was not an antidote that could instantly cure America's long-standing racial disparities. For instance, while the Affordable Care Act, often referred to as Obamacare, expanded access to health care for millions of Americans, some critics argued that it did not go far enough in addressing the specific healthcare disparities experienced by Black Americans. Similar sentiments were expressed about his approach to criminal justice reform, with some activists asserting that more radical measures were needed to dismantle the systemic racism embedded in America's justice system. The Democratic Party's support for Obama's agenda also generated varied responses within the Black community. On one hand, there was widespread praise for the party's commitment to diversity, representation, and its efforts to advance racial equality. Yet on the other hand, there was scrutiny. Some felt that the Democratic Party was not proactive enough in pushing for more aggressive policies to combat racial inequality. It's crucial to remember that these critiques do not diminish the significance of Obama's presidency. Instead, they underscore the complexities of race and politics in America. They remind us that while electing a Black president was a momentous step forward, it was not a magic bullet that could instantly eradicate centuries of racial inequality. In conclusion, the Democratic Party's support for Obama was met with both praise and scrutiny. This dichotomy illustrates that the journey towards racial equality is layered, complex, and far from over. It's a continual process that requires persistent effort, introspection, and an unwavering commitment to justice and equality. What is the legacy of Barack Obama's presidency? This question invites a multifaceted exploration, but one aspect stands out in particular: the transformative impact on diversity and representation in politics. Barack Obama's election as the first black president of the United States was not just a historical milestone, it was an inspiration. His victory sparked a wave of motivation, encouraging more black candidates to run for office at all levels of government, from local councils to the national stage. This shift wasn't limited to the political sphere. It reverberated through our society, challenging the status quo and fostering a new generation of leaders. It was a testament to the power of aspiration, the belief that anyone, regardless of their race or background, could reach the highest echelons of power. The Democratic Party, which had championed Obama's candidacy, saw this as an opportunity to build on the momentum of his presidency. It recognized the need for a political landscape that mirrored the diversity of the nation it served. As such, the party redoubled its efforts, seeking to promote racial justice and equality, not just in its rhetoric, but in its actions and policies. The legacy of Obama's presidency goes beyond the individual. It's about a broader shift in consciousness, a new understanding of what's possible. It's about the collective progress we've made and the challenges that still lie ahead. It's about the ongoing quest for a more inclusive, equitable society where everyone has a fair shot at the American dream. Yet it's also a reminder of the work that remains. Racial justice and equality are not destinations, but ongoing journeys. They require constant vigilance, relentless advocacy, and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths. In the final analysis, Obama's presidency serves as a beacon, a guiding light in our collective pursuit of a more inclusive and equitable America. It's a testament to the power of hope, progress, and the resilience of the human spirit. Obama's presidency serves as a reminder of the ongoing struggle for justice and equality for all Americans.